If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what?
Smart.
Pay her a couple $1,000,000, go away. We're going to bring another person to play this role. If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what?
Smart.
Pay her a couple $1,000,000, go away. We're going to bring another person to play this role.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what?
Smart.
Pay her a couple $1,000,000, go away. We're going to bring another person to play this role.
Did one rising star, armed with little more than sincerity and a few unfortunately phrased sentences, accidentally ignite a raging multi-billion-dollar dumpster fire directly under the carefully constructed castle of the Walt Disney Company? It reads like a pitch for a Hollywood satire, a wildly implausible scenario cooked up in a cynical writer's room. Yet, the protracted, increasingly bizarre saga surrounding Disney's live-action Snow White remake and its young lead, Rachel Zegler, has become far more than just another casting kerfuffle. It has evolved into a sprawling, deeply uncomfortable, and astonishingly public masterclass in modern controversy. This is a maelstrom where deeply ingrained nostalgia for childhood classics collides head-on with demands for progressive representation, where the instantaneous, often brutal judgment of social media dictates multi-million-dollar marketing strategies, and where the immense pressure of corporate synergy meets the unpredictable reality of human expression. Disney's strategy of excavating its own animated vault for live-action reimaginings, while often financially lucrative, has always courted debate. Maleficent reframed a villain, Mulan shed its songs, but none have approached the sheer scale, vitriol, and complexity of the Snow White debacle. It's a perfect storm, fueled by cultural anxieties, algorithmic amplification, and a series of seemingly avoidable missteps, raising profound questions about artistic ownership, audience expectation, the immense power wielded by online mobs, and the terrifyingly precarious nature of navigating fame in the digital age. The financial stakes are staggering, the delays unprecedented, and the panicked whispers leaking from usually sealed corporate corridors within the Magic Kingdom suggest a crisis far deeper than mere public relations challenges. Rachel Zegler didn't just arrive in Hollywood, she materialized like a force of nature. Handpicked from a staggering number of hopefuls in a nationwide search for Steven Spielberg's visually stunning and critically lauded West Side Story adaptation, her performance as Maria wasn't merely competent, it was a revelation. Critics scrambled for superlatives, praising her crystalline soprano voice, her natural charisma that illuminated the screen, and the startling emotional authenticity she brought to a role burdened by decades of iconic interpretations. Golden Globe wins and Oscar buzz followed naturally, cementing her overnight status as Hollywood's brightest new discovery, a bona fide star seemingly destined for greatness. So, when Disney, the ultimate validator of mainstream cinematic appeal, announced her casting as Snow White, the original Disney princess, the bedrock upon which much of their animated empire was built, it felt like a perfectly orchestrated coronation. It seemed the logical, almost preordained next step in a career trajectory that resembled a modern fairy tale itself. The studio radiated confidence, publicly lauding her extraordinary talent and positioning her as the ideal choice to infuse the character with contemporary relevance while honoring her legacy. But the ink on the press releases was barely dry before the digital dam broke. The celebratory atmosphere evaporated almost instantly, replaced by a visceral, widespread backlash online. Cyberspace didn't just divide, it violently fractured. The hashtag number #NotMySnowWhite didn't just trend, it exploded, becoming a rallying cry for a diverse coalition of detractors. The initial, most prominent arguments centered on race. Critics vehemently insisted that casting a Latina actress fundamentally betrayed the character, whose defining trait, they argued, citing both the Brothers Grimm source material and the explicit descriptions in the 1937 film, Skin White as Snow, was her pallor. This argument quickly expanded, absorbing broader anxieties about perceived wokeness in Hollywood, historical revisionism, and a feeling among some that cherished childhood properties were being ideologically hijacked. Mocking memes juxtaposing Zegler with the animated princess flooded social media timelines. Entire YouTube channels devoted themselves to dissecting the casting, framing it as an affront to tradition. Comment sections devolved into toxic cesspools of racist remarks and aggressive gatekeeping. Before she had even uttered a line of dialogue on set, Rachel Zegler became the unwilling lightning rod for a furious, complex cultural debate, a symbol onto which polarized factions projected their deepest anxieties about change, identity, and ownership of cultural icons. However, these initial casting skirmishes, intense as they were, merely set the stage. The main detonation, the one that would irrevocably shape the narrative, was triggered not by anonymous online critics, but by Zegler's own words, captured in promotional interviews. If the casting controversy ignited the highly flammable tinder, Zegler's subsequent interviews effectively doused it in high-octane fuel. During the standard promotional circuit, appearances on entertainment news shows, print interviews with major publications, online junkets, intended to generate positive buzz and connect the star with potential audiences, she delivered a series of remarks that achieved near instantaneous and enduring internet infamy. Discussing the revered 1937 animated classic in a Variety interview alongside co-star Gal Gadot, she confessed, perhaps with more unfiltered honesty than strategic calculation, that she found the original film quite dated and had only watched it once before being cast. She recalled finding the prince's interactions weird and admitted to being frightened by the film as a child, citing a tearful experience on the Snow White's Scary Adventures ride at Walt Disney World. While potentially relatable anecdotes, these admissions were immediately seized by critics as definitive proof that she harbored contempt for the very property she was being paid handsomely to embody. The damage escalated dramatically when she addressed the fairy tale's central romance. "It's no longer 1937, she stated emphatically, outlining a vision for her Snow White focused not on awaiting rescue or dreaming of a prince, but on discovering her own agency and potential for leadership. While arguably a necessary modernization in the eyes of the filmmakers, this statement struck a nerve with many who cherished the original's classic love story, framing Zegler as dismissive of traditional fairy tale tropes. Then came the soundbite that echoed endlessly. During an extra TV interview, asked about the reimagining of the prince, Zegler chuckled and remarked that the original character, who kisses the sleeping Snow White without her consent, could be accurately labeled a stalker in a modern context. She compounded this by casually suggesting his scenes might even be cut from the film entirely if they didn't align with the updated narrative focused on Snow White's journey. These quotes, relentlessly clipped, often stripped of nuance and the surrounding conversation, became viral grenades. They ricocheted across every conceivable social media platform. TikTok duets mocking her tone, YouTube commentary channels racking up millions of views dissecting her perceived arrogance, Twitter threads decrying her pseudo-feminism. The narrative shifted irrevocably. Zegler was no longer just potentially miscast, she was widely portrayed as actively hostile to the source material, ungrateful for a career-making opportunity, and seemingly determined to inject a political agenda into a universally beloved story. The cumulative effect of these sound bites, delivered over several months, created a perception nightmare, one that overshadowed her acclaimed talent and proved incredibly difficult to counteract. And disturbingly for Disney, Zegler's words weren't the only ones fanning the inferno. Another casting minefield was about to explode. The seemingly secondary yet symbolically potent issue of the Seven Dwarfs suddenly detonated into a primary, highly volatile flashpoint, further cornering Disney and amplifying the sense of a production spiraling out of control. The catalyst was a powerful statement from Peter Dinklage, the globally respected actor celebrated for his nuanced performances and his consistent advocacy against harmful stereotypes associated with dwarfism. In a widely publicized podcast interview, Dinklage didn't hold back, expressing bafflement and outrage at what he saw as profound hypocrisy from Disney. He questioned the logic of championing a racially progressive Snow White casting while simultaneously planning to perpetuate what he described bluntly as a fucking backwards story about seven dwarfs living in a cave together. His impassioned critique, "Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? I guess I'm not loud enough," carried immense moral and cultural authority, putting Disney in an immediate, deeply uncomfortable defensive position. Their publicly announced response involved hastily stating they were consulting with members of the dwarfism community and would be taking a different approach with the 7 characters to avoid reinforcing stereotypes. This vague promise materialized into the decision to reimagine the companions not as dwarves,